Long ago, in the olden days, there lived a good and kind king and his beautiful queen. Their home was a magnificent castle surrounded by wide forests and great gardens. They had hundreds of servants and guards and ladies-in-waiting and noblemen around them, and ruled over a happy land of loyal subjects who lived in the towns and villages near the castle. It would seem that they should have been the happiest couple in the world, but they weren't, for they had no children. More than anything in the world, they wanted to have a little prince. But then, at long last, a daughter was born to them, a lovely baby princess. Oh, what rejoicing there was throughout the kingdom. How loudly the joy bells rang in every tower and steeple to proclaim the news. The king kissed his queen, and he kissed the princess, and said,
"My dearest wife, we must have a royal christening."
Oh, yes, my dearest husband. And we must invite all the royal aunts and uncles.
And all the dukes and duchesses.
And all the barons and baronesses.
And we must not forget the good fairies.
So the day of the christening came. The air was filled with blossoms, song, and gladness. The people thronged the palace to make merry and to present their gifts to the newborn baby. There were gifts of silver and gold and rubies and diamonds. There were silks and satins and laces. In the midst of all the celebration, the 6 good fairies came dancing in, and one by one they presented their gifts. Said one,
"I give you beauty, dear princess."
Said another,
"I give you kindness and goodness, dear princess."
and the third fairy said,
"I give you the gift of wisdom."
and the fourth,
"And I, the gift of love. You shall love, dear princess, and be loved."
Now,
Mine is the gift of song and laughter.
and now, just as the 6th fairy was about to give her gift to the princess, the big doors to the banquet room blew open, and the oldest of all the fairies hobbled in with the aid of a stick. She was dressed all in black and was bent double with age and bad temper. At the sight of her, everyone drew back, and the king and queen grew pale. They recognized the old fairy. They had not invited her to the celebration because they thought she was so old and had surely died. The king said,
"Ah, madam, we are indeed delighted to welcome you here. A false rumor deceived us into thinking you were dead. How truly overwhelmed we are to discover our mistake and find you among us in the prime of youth."
"Prime of fiddlesticks? You shall indeed be overwhelmed before I leave. Canaries and cobras. I've never been so insulted in all my life. That is an aspect. I'll show you whether I'm dead or not. What tears shall flow for this day's work."
Please, madam.
Hoity-toity, stand back. Stand back, I say. And hear my gift. Little princess sleeping here with a spindle by and by, thou shalt in thy 16th year prick thy finger and so die.
No, madam, no, please.
No, my baby, no, please.
The queen fainted in her husband's arms. The ladies-in-waiting and dukes and lords and earls and all the assembled guests fell to weeping and wringing their hands, and the oldest of all the fairies vanished away in a great cloud of evil-smelling smoke. The queen was revived with rosewater and smelling salts, and she took her baby girl in her arms and held her close.
She must not die. She must not die.
All were in despair. Then, suddenly, from behind the silken curtains near the royal cradle, peeped a lovely little face. Her gossamer wings shimmered in the sudden sunlight. It was the 6th fairy, the youngest fairy of all.
Ah, my king and queen, do not give up all hope, for I still have a gift to give. Listen, I cannot undo all that the oldest fairy has done, for she is very ancient. But what I can do, that I will, and all shall end happily, I promise. Little princess, you shall not die, but sleep. Sleep for 100 years. Sleep until one day a king's son shall come and wake you with a kiss.
And with these words, the youngest fairy kissed the little princess and then floated away on the golden sunbeam of the evening and was lost in the music and the beauty of the ending day. In the days that followed, the king took every precaution to protect his beloved daughter. The royal trumpeter passed through the kingdom proclaiming,
Hear ye, hear ye! Be it known unto all men and all women that every spinning wheel, distaff, or spindle in this kingdom shall be burned at once. Anyone found using any of the aforementioned shall be severely punished. Hear ye, hear ye!
Gladly, all the king's subjects obeyed this proclamation, and as the years passed, there was never a spinning wheel to be seen in all the kingdom. So the little princess grew up very happily in the castle. All the fairy's wishes came true. She was beautiful, kind, and good. She was also wise and much loved by all. Her laughter was like the sound of tinkling bells, and her song like that of a nightingale. By the time she had turned 16, the old fairy was completely forgotten. It was on the morning of her royal birthday that the princess decided to explore the castle. For although she had lived there all her life, there were many rooms that she had never visited. And since it happened to be a gloomy, rainy day, it seemed just a nice way to spend her time. So she set out all by herself through the long, dark passages, singing as she went, with never a care or a fear in the world. Soon she came into a dark, deserted part of the castle, where the great tower was. She started up the twisty, musty, spiral staircase. Up and up and up it wound, through dust and cobwebs and dead leaves. When the princess came to the end of the spiral staircase, she found herself standing in front of an old wooden door fastened together with big iron strips. There was a large iron ring handle on the door, and the princess took hold of it with both hands and pulled it. The princess entered the tower room. It was a small room, but surprisingly enough, not dark and damp and dreary, but rather bright and warm and cheery. There was a friendly fire glowing on the hearth and a carpet on the floor. But what surprised the princess most was the unexpected sight of a little old woman with white hair sitting on her way at a spinning wheel.
Old woman, what are you doing?
Well, my pretty child, you're the first visitor I've had these 20 years or more. Come in, please come in.
What's that funny wooden wheel? What a fascinating noise it makes.
Dearie me, how ignorant young ladies are these days. I'm spinning, child, spinning.
Oh, what a lovely thread you've made. So soft and smooth. Please, let me see if I can spin too. It looks such fun.
Well, of course. Sit down, my dear. Sit down. We'll begin your first spinning lesson. Now, put your foot on the treadle, so, and take the spindle in your hand.
My foot is squarely on the treadle. Now give me the spindle, please. Oh, I pricked my finger.
Oh, I'm so sorry, dearie. Is it bleeding?
No, doesn't even hurt. I feel so strange. The whole room is spinning round me. It's getting dark. I can't keep my eyes open. I hear music somewhere, lulling me to sleep.
And so the princess fell into a deep and sweet sleep. Her lips parted in a smile, as though she was having a happy dream. And in another moment, the little old lady was yawning and rubbing her eyes, and she and into a sound sleep. Then a very remarkable thing happened. The birds in the castle garden ceased their singing. The bees stopped their buzzing, and the brook its murmuring. And throughout the castle, as though charmed, every living creature fell asleep. The king was in his council chamber, sleeping peacefully beneath his crown. The queen slept over a tea table in the royal parlor. The page boys and ladies in waiting slept in the anterooms, some in the midst of a game of cards, some in the midst of playing a spinet piano. In other rooms in the great castle slept the dukes and duchesses, the barons and baronets. In the royal pantries slept the butlers and parlor maids, and in the kitchen the cooks slept over boiling pots which had ceased their boiling. The dogs and cats were also sleeping, and so were the horses in the royal stables. Then another strange thing happened. A great hedge of thorny roses and brambles sprang up around the castle. It was so high that the tops of the turrets and towers could barely be seen above it, and everything within the hedge slept. Outside the hedge, the people of the village wondered what had happened. They came to the castle and tried to break through the hedge, but it was impossible because it was too thick with brambles, and the thorns were so sharp that they pricked fiercely, and many brave villagers were killed trying to get through. A great sorrow filled the hearts of all the king's subjects, because they knew that the old fairy's wish had come true. And so the years went by. Now and again a king's son, hearing the legend of the sleeping princess, would come from some foreign land seeking to awaken her. But they all failed and withdrew sadly from the cruel and enchanted hedge. 100 years passed, and there came a prince out of the far distant kingdom of Stamako. He was the handsomest prince in the world, and the bravest too, and he came in quest of adventure. The sun was warm as he rode through the great forest with his companion, and he said to him, "The afternoon sun is descending, friend, and soon it will be cooler."
Your Highness, why do you ride in this strange forest? I fear you might encounter enemies here.
Never, my friend. Only beauty.
What do you mean, my lord?
My friend, last night I had a dream, a strange and wonderful dream, and in it I saw the face of the most beautiful maiden in all the world. Her hair was as gold as this autumn sunlight, her cheeks as pink as briar roses, and her lips parted as if she were about to whisper a name.
What were her eyes, my lord? Blue?
Well, I could not tell, for her eyes were closed, and the long lashes lay on her cheeks like delicate sunbeams. She was asleep. Ah, see, we are coming out of the woods now and into a village. The royal palace must be close by, and they will surely give us lodging for the night. We'll stop at this inn and ask where it might be. Ah, there's the innkeeper. Good sir, will you tell me, please, where's the castle?
You seek the royal castle, my lord? Ah, your highness, it stands there before your eyes, but you cannot see it because of the hedge that surrounds it, all grown about with creepers and thorns and brambles through which no man may pass.
Where's the royal family?
Your highness, 50 years and more ago, my father told me the tale of that castle, as his father had told it to him. Therein sleeps a princess, the loveliest in all the world, and she must sleep 100 years by the will of the fairies. But at the last there shall come that one prince for whom she is destined, and he shall wake her from the magic sleep with a kiss.
That prince has come, good sir. Come, my friend, we shall ride to the hedge. And so the prince and his companion galloped toward the great hedge. There the prince dismounted and drew closer. He closely examined the brambles and briars with their sharp, cruel thorns, so thick and so strong that they would frighten away any brave man. But the prince drew his golden sword from its scabbard, lifted it in the air, and then he touched the hedge, and lo, the branches and brambles parted, and the prince walked through. The hedge closed at once, and his companion could not enter. Now the prince found himself alone on the castle grounds. On a wall near the gate, he found a sentry sleeping soundly. In the courtyard, men and dogs and cats slept in all kinds of positions. The prince entered through the great doors into the castle and the great hall. He stood there, listening to the greatest and most terrible silence he had ever known. All around him, people sleeping gently and silently, with never a snore. The king, his counselors, the queen, her ladies-in-waiting, the royal dukes and duchesses, barons and baronets. The prince started down a long and deserted passageway, his footfalls echoing in the silence. He walked as though drawn like a magnet toward one place, though he knew not where. He came to the spiral staircase, dark and musty, reaching up into the tower. His feet seemed to know the direction that his heart was taking him. Up and around he went on the winding steps until he found himself before an ancient door with a massive iron ring for a handle. He put his hand on it, turned it, and pulled the door open. He walked into the small tower room and drew his breath in wonder. For there, on the floor, lay sleeping the loveliest princess in all the world. Her hair lay all about her face like a pool of autumn sunlight. Her long lashes lay on her cheeks like delicate sunbeams, and her lips were parted as though she was about to whisper a name. The prince knelt and kissed the princess gently. She stirred in her sleep, and then slowly her eyes opened, and she looked into the eyes of the prince.
Oh, my prince, it's you. You have come at last.
My beloved princess, I've been seeking through all the world to find you. Now you are found, and with you all the happiness and all peace and all awakening. The prince took the princess in his arms and kissed her again. And at that moment, the entire castle awoke. The birds began to sing, the bees to buzz, the brooks to murmur. The king was awake, the queen, everyone. Even the hedge disappeared. The charm had been broken. The royal family rejoiced and began to make plans for the royal wedding of the handsome prince and the beautiful princess. Never in all its history was there such a night of happiness and rejoicing in the old castle. Indeed, nobody went to bed at all that night, for as you may well believe, no one in all the castle was the slightest bit sleepy.